Welcome to our April MLIAC meeting. We like to hold this meeting in conjunction with the MEGIP GeoCon conference, especially when we have a chance to meet in person. It's a great chance for other members of the GIS community to be able to participate in this meeting. So if you're joining us for your first MLIAC meeting, welcome. We're glad to have you here. We're going to go ahead and start with introductions. My name is Jenny Stapp, and I'm the Montana State Librarian. I'm going to ask members of the council to introduce themselves. I'm going to do my best to call on people in order so we don't talk over ourselves. And Alan, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, good afternoon, council members and audience members participating today. Thanks for joining us. Alan Armstrong here, representing the Department of Interior from the Bureau of Land Management. I am in the Billings office, and our office covers Montana and North Dakota and South Dakota as well.
Glad to have you, Alan. Mike Wasserman.
Hi, good afternoon. Mike Bosleman from Department of Transportation. I'm the CIO at MDT, and thanks everyone. Welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex Dado. I'm the State Soil Scientist for the Natural Resources Conservation Service, Department of Agriculture here for Montana. And I supervise our GIS staff for the state. Thanks.
Welcome to your first meeting, Alex. We're glad to have you. Frank.
Hi, everybody. I'm Frank Dewar. I'm a local government representative representing the City of Bozeman GIS Department.
Elena.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elena Graham. I work for the U.S. Forest Service in Great Falls, and I represent USDA.
Jerry.
Hello, everyone. This is Jerry Gerbentz. I am a senior land use planner, floodplain manager for Great West Engineering here in Helena, and I am a private sector representative.
Valentine.
Yeah, good afternoon. This is Valentine Hoff. I work at the Fire Center at the University of Montana in Missoula, and I represent the Montana University System.
Lee.
Hi, everybody. Lee Mackholtz. I am the GIS program manager with the City of Missoula, and I'm a local government representative.
Eric.
Hi, this is Eric Spangenberg. I am a GIS coordinator with Lewis and Clark County and the City of Helena, and I'm a local government representative.
And Dan Staley.
Hi, everyone. This is Dan Staley. I'm a professional land surveyor for Staley Engineering and Associates in Billings and Helena and Bozeman. And I'm on the council as a representative for the Montana Association of Registered Land Surveyors.
Did I miss any council members? I want to say a special welcome to our new administrative assistant, Genevieve Lighthizer. She joined us just after the first of the year, so this is her first council meeting as well. So Genevieve, welcome. Thanks for coordinating everything for us. We're looking forward to having a chance to introduce her to you in person. Let's see, Erin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I do. I had to find my mute button. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Erin Fashway. I am the state GIS coordinator, and I staff the council.
And Evan.
Hello, Evan Hammer, Digital Library Administrator at the Montana State Library.
Ken.
Ken Wall. I'm here representing the State Library Commission, possibly for the last time. My commission role is over in April, but and I haven't heard about a replacement yet from the governor. But only the final one in this capacity. Put it that way.
Thanks, Ken. See, Gina. Is it Maza?
Yeah, that's me. Gina Mazza here. I work for the DNRC Trust Lands, and I manage our data there.
Welcome. We're glad to have you with us. Jessica Mitchell.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jessica Mitchell. I lead up the Spatial Analysis Lab at and have a land cover plan item on the agenda today. We had a LiDAR workshop this morning that went, I think, pretty well, and we had Gina attending there this morning.
Oh, great. John Stroud.
Hello, I'm John Stroud. I work with Timmons Group. I'm an account manager and senior consultant. I've been here about a year. I've been in GIS for about 26 years. Thanks.
You're welcome. Michael Kruger.
Hello, my name is Michael Kruger. I'm here representing MLIAC. I currently serve as the president. Thank you.
Glad to have you with us. Let's see, Brandy Holstein from DOR.
Yes, hi. Yes, I am here representing Corey Hoffland for DOR.
Great, glad you could be with us, Brandy.
Thanks.
Bryce. Sure, trickling in.
Bryce Maxwell, I'm the program coordinator at the Montana Natural Heritage Program.
Glad you could be with us. Did I miss anybody?
I think Quinn just arrived.
Hi, Quinn. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started with the agenda. First, starting with some announcements. We've had, in addition to the retirements we had at the end of the calendar year, some key council members retiring this spring, including Janet Cornish. Many of you have known and worked with Janet for many, many years. She was just instrumental to the GIS community and the local government and planning community here in Montana. She was certainly an incredibly strong supporter of the Land Information Advisory Council and our grant program. We certainly miss her and wish her well. And then Elena, I think, Elena, this might be your last meeting as you're retiring from the USDA. We'll miss you and your input as well.
Yep, I will be done at the end of this month. So this, I believe, will be my last meeting.
We wish you all the best. Go ahead,
Thanks.
Erin.
I made some screens and I was like trying to pull it up. you beat me to it. So I just made a few PowerPoints. Yeah, we will miss Janet and Elena, of course. Really enjoyed working with them over the years, and they've both been dedicated members of the council, helping out on the grant program and the land information plan. So. Big shoes to fill when we fill your positions. So thank you very much for your service to the council.
Indeed, thank you very much. I did want to mention the council appointment process. Erin and I are working to schedule a meeting with Governor Gianforte's boards and appointments advisors so we can better understand their process and timeline that they will undergo. We've obviously had appointments of new cabinet members and people replacing and representing those new council members like Brandy. Brandy could be with us. And we expect that other state agency representatives may be turning over as well. And then for everyone else, we're coming up on our normal application period. The current appointments end at the end of the calendar year, or I'm sorry, at the end of the fiscal year, although at least in previous administrations had council members serve until new appointments were made. And so that's one of the questions that we'll have for Governor Gianforte's office is, do they envision sort of a hard stop for those appointments, or will they ask that you continue to serve until new appointments are made? And then, of course, we hope that many of you will consider applying again and continuing to serve on the council. I feel like we've got a really great group of people working together right now who are really invested, and hope that you'll continue to serve. If there's anything that we can do to help the application process and smooth that over, let us know. And as we hear more from their office, we'll be sure to share that information as well. Erin, did you have anything you wanted to add on the appointment process?
No, I think you hit it pretty well. Yeah, we're just going to want to, just to follow up, just going to see what the new administration wants to do. And we'll be looking for those, if you are interested in staying on, I guess you could email Jenny and I and let us know, and we can start through that process. But working on getting those replacements for those folks who have retired and have not yet been replaced. And just for a point of order, Jenny, we had Brian Collins join us, and he's going to be filling in for DNRC today.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Brian, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Sorry I was a little delayed in getting here.
No problem, we're glad to have you. And then the other announcement I just wanted to share with you, which is linked from the agenda, is a link to a story map that staff from the State Library created at the beginning of the calendar year. It was an introduction to the State Library GIS services, as well as other kinds of services, organized in a story map that intended to align in many ways to Governor Gianforte's comeback plan for Montana. And so you'll see a number of different areas of information that align to his priorities for the comeback plan that demonstrate the work of the State Library and the work of the GIS staff and the spatial data infrastructure to inform Montana state government. So I hope that is good information for you to have about work at the State Library that you may or may not be familiar with. This information was also shared with Governor Gianforte's cabinet members, as well as members of his staff as they've come on board. The first order of business is approval of the December 16th, 2020 executive summary. Are there any corrections or additions to that summary? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
Dan,
I so move.
So moved.
Dan, is there a second?
Second, this is Eric.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Michael, again, welcome. I want to give the MAGIP report. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm skipping the grant review subcommittee. Erin, my apologies.
No worries. I just wanted to give everyone an update on the Amplifund implementation. So we were successfully able to use the Amplifund tool to advertise for the FY 2022 Montana Land Information Act grant and score through that tool. And I want to thank the staff who worked on it with us, and also the council members as part of the subcommittee, because there definitely was a learning curve this year, but we were able to get it done. And I think it was pretty smooth sailing with the implementation of the tool. And we're just moving full speed ahead with the implementation. So just pretty brief, I just wanted to fill everyone in that that tool has been implemented. And I guess starting this we have one grant in it right now, FY 2021. This will be the second FY 2022. And I think this fall will mark our 1-year anniversary, and then we'll celebrate then.
Good. Any questions for Aaron? Now, Michael.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm sure as many of you know, currently have Big Sky GeoCon happening right now. It's our first ever attempt at a fully virtual full conference. Our first 2 days are workshops, yesterday and today. I think so far things have been going well. We have our concurrent sessions beginning tomorrow with a slew of different presenters we're very excited about. We have some social happenings tonight. Sorry to be making a plug for the conference to y'all, but going to be some trivia and games as well as the map gallery contest tonight. But so far we've been very pleased with what we're able to do with that conference platform, and just seeing all the membership who've attended. I know the last time that I had checked, we were well over 100 attendees. I think we were kind of in that 150, 200 range, and it was certainly more than we anticipated. With the pandemic and not being able to have that in-person conference, and we wanted to be cautious, of course, here in 2021, but at the same time still have that offering. It's been a really great platform for that, and we're looking forward to see how the numbers kind of come out or shake out at the end of the conference in relation to the costs of the platform and our planning fees. But so far it's been good, and I encourage you all to, if you have the opportunity to attend some of the concurrent sessions later this week. We also have our elections coming up here in June. We have a few board members terms are going to be coming to an end, so we're actively recruiting new members to be nominated. I believe we need a treasurer, tech committee, and I believe our business and ops chair is also going to be either need to rerun those positions or have some new folks step in. So that's one of the pushes we're having at the conference, is just trying to get out the word for those elections. We also are pushing out a new salary survey. We just announced it this past week, and we're going to have another announcement tomorrow for it. But we're going to try to do a better job of refreshing that salary data at the regional level. We've reached out to EURESA and some other organizations to get feedback from them on how we can structure it. But we see value in having that data available to our membership at kind of this more local level, more targeted. And like I said, we just want to do a better job of keeping that up to date. And we have some great board members right now who, Jeff Hedstrom and Steve J, who really taken point on that. And I'm excited to see that get rolled out this week as well. I guess the only other thing is, I didn't get the chance to meet with y'all when Eric was appointed to kind of be the MLIAC, to be the MLIAC representative to the mega board. And just want to say I'm very excited, and it's just been great to work with Eric so far. We're really happy to have MLIAC on the board. So thank you all for that, and we're just really appreciative to have Eric there with us. That's about it. The conference has just been really all-consuming for us. Probably be able to clear my head after this week, but are there any questions from anyone?
Yeah, Michael, this is Erin Fashway. I just had a quick question. How was the turnout for sponsors and exhibitors?
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, we've had a phenomenal turnout. I don't have the numbers, like the financial numbers in front of me, but I've honestly haven't seen this many sponsors turn out before. I believe our last in-person conference was in 2018, now, or no, 2019, I'm sorry. And this just kind of blew that out of the water. We did lower our sponsorship fees a little bit this year to kind of account for the fact that they're not having that face-to-face time. But Aaron, I know you've reached out to many of them, and I know others have too. So thank you so much for reaching out to them. You know, we didn't have really any revenue last year with the pandemic. Not having a conference was a very big part of that. So we really needed the vendors to show up in a big way for us, and they did so much. Sanborn sending out the swag packs, of course, the monetary piece of it with their sponsorship, and then tonight they're doing some giveaways. Sanborn's got a trivia night, and a few others. So it's just been amazing. Just going on the website and seeing that huge list of sponsors. I know it's covered at least all of our conference platform costs. I know it's definitely covering a good chunk of the admin planning fees. And it's going to just set us up well to kind of hopefully return to that in-person framework next year, you know, barring, you know, if the situation changes again.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations with all your success.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Michael?
Hey, Michael, this is Alan. I was just curious what if you had a total number count of the grant apps this year.
I don't, but I can get those to Alan. If that's all right.
Just curious if that was up or down and what kind of audience that's still reaching.
I know there.
No hurry.
I know there's been some. I just don't know the total. If you know how it compares to years past.
Well, again, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jenny.
And Eric, thank you for serving on the media board. Aaron, you want to give the GIS coordinators report?
Yes, I do. Let me pull up some slides here. Skip. All right. You probably should be able to see my screen now. Yes. Okay, great. Well, I just wanted to touch on a few things right now, and we can get into some other things deeper into the meeting. And basically, I have great news. The Montana State Library, along with our partners, were awarded another grant through the USGS 3DEP program. And not to exceed, I think it's like 2.2 million. We got that announcement in mid-March. So thanks to Troy and his working group for all the hard work that they're doing to basically ensure that we have statewide LiDAR for Montana. Right now, at this point, we're about at 50% acquisition, which is crazy. I don't think Evan and I ever thought we'd even get here. But we're chugging along, and basically here is the collection area for this particular grant. If you use the Montana LiDAR inventory application, and I can drop it in the chat if you're interested, you probably have all seen the story map. Troy and I have both demoed it many times, but that is an ongoing tool that you can utilize to request areas or to identify existing LiDAR that we have available, or to identify flights and when that information should become available. I guess I'll just stop there. Are there any questions about the LiDAR acquisition at this point? And I guess as a refresher, it'll get flown this summer. And then, you know, we usually don't see that data till the following spring. So it's kind of a slower turnaround, very similar to imagery, but it's a lot of information being processed. So it's very typical for the processing. And I do believe we just got in Lincoln County, which has been one of some of our folks, our techs at the library, are busy processing LiDAR requests lately. And so we did just get in some new LiDAR recently. So if you're interested, again, I'll drop that that inventory into the chat box, and you can learn how to get that information. If there's no questions there.
Hi, Aaron. I had one quick question in regards to the LiDAR inventory. I've been receiving some questions from some local government folks here in Billings and in Yellowstone County, and they were just wondering how they could kind of get better involved with this program to help kind of move along initiatives.
Yeah,
we did some submissions through the story map, but wanted to see if there's other things we could do.
Yeah, great question. So thank you for asking it. Basically, you know, the way we've been prioritizing the collection is based on data partners or funding partners, not data partners. And so if the county is interested in collecting LiDAR, and they can possibly come up with some funding to help match it. Otherwise, I would say definitely attend the meetings, the working group meetings, and get on that list. And you can send me an email or Troy, and we can make sure you get on those lists. And basically, we can start collaborating with folks in the county to try to get that prioritized.
Great.
Aaron, could I just,
thank you.
I just want to jump in and comment as well. I'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to the legislative report, but under the Federal American Rescue Plan Act, the state library has submitted a proposal to complete statewide LiDAR. And the process for those funds to be awarded is a little bit in flux right now, and it looks like could involve an application process to the state a little bit later this summer. And so to the extent that we have a possibility of getting funding through ARPA for completing statewide LiDAR, any support that we could get from local officials for that application would be very beneficial, and we can certainly put out a call for that support as we know a little bit more about what that funding process might look like.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. Any other questions about LiDAR?
Aaron, this is Alan. So if this data was collected or will be collected in the future, how does one obtain that?
Right now, it depends on the size in the area of what you're asking for, but basically you would submit a request through the app, and those are being fulfilled by staff daily. So you would submit your selection area, unless you just want to say give it all to me. And we've been able to utilize Teams in OneDrive to transfer the information. It's actually worked quite well with the large amounts of data that we use. It's a little different process for imagery. If you want imagery, usually you're ending, folks are sending hard drives to us, and we're fulfilling it that way. But the OneDrive has worked well for LiDAR requests. We are looking into different tools in the future. And so, that's, again, if you want to learn more about what tools we are looking into, I'd say, definitely join the working group. Okay. So the state of Montana, we're partnering with a couple counties, Sanders County, Blaine County, and with this recent grant, another county, for the geo-enabled elections. And basically, we're on the pilot project. I think they're at round 3 right now. Round 2 for us, round 3 for NSGIC. And we've had a lot of really great successes to date with our partnership with the Secretary of State's office, and really excited to be moving forward. And tomorrow I'll be giving a presentation with the folks from Blaine County and Sanders County on the process and progress we've had to date on our geo-enabled elections work. But we're really excited. The Secretary of State is has the goal of going live with their new election system early next year, and that will definitely include MSDI data, being streets and addresses, and the administrative boundaries. So it's a very worthwhile process, and we're very excited to be a part of it. Any questions about that? And then this is fun for those of you that have seen some of the MSL in the news lately. Last week, Troy Blanford was quoted along with some other folks on the governor's drought advisory council, and so these are just basically snapshots from the IR on some of the data products that we create in partnership with the NRCS and the DNRC. And so these are some of our standard products that we have that officials use to make decisions regarding drought-related activities and items. So I just thought that was pretty nice to see our maps and graphs in the news. And then another one that was a little earlier in the year when we released our new dashboard for vaccinations. I just happened to be watching the news very early in the morning and saw a newscaster from Billings basically demoing how to use their dashboard. So I don't think you could get any better publicity. So I thought that was fun. And I don't have the link here, but I can drop it into the chat as well. And I think that pretty much covers it for now. And we're going to get into some of the other stuff I want to talk about later in the agenda.
Thanks, Erin. Any quick questions for Erin? You also have in your agenda under the standing reports, the second quarter financial report from the State Library. Genevieve, bring that up for me. Erin, who's ever in control. This is the larger State Library second quarter financial report that's been reviewed and approved by the State Library Commission. They will review the third quarter financial report at their meeting next week, and then that will be shared with the council. I mostly wanted to bring to your attention a couple of points that will also inform our report on the legislative activities. Right. And if you could just scroll down to the very last page. So what's reported there is the funding that's collected in the land information account. There's technically two accounts. There's the working account at the State Library, and then there's the fund that is invested with the Board of Investments. Any funds that are collected in excess of our appropriation get invested with the Board of Investments there. And so this chart shows the combined amount of those two accounts. And as we've talked about over the years, we've noticed some funding volatility. That won't be a surprise to many of the council members. What obviously jumps out here is the increase in collections in the last several months largely, we believe, due to COVID and the enormous housing activity tied to people moving to Montana during this pandemic period. We think this is a bubble. We don't know when it will end and to what degree we should expect those dollars to drop off, but we do expect this bubble to burst at some point. And so in thinking about how we might best be able to make use of the funds that have collected in the account, we approached our legislative budget committee about the idea of using these funds to help stand up a statewide real-time network, something that we've talked about with this council in the past, and have worked closely with the tribes and the Department of Transportation to put together some project proposals and some ideas of what that might look like. There are, of course, pockets of real-time network around the state, and we've been involved in a pilot in Western Montana with the state of Washington now for several years. So we're very excited about the fact that right now what exists in House Bill 2, the state budget bill, is a one-time only appropriation to spend these excess dollars over the next biennium to support that effort. We think it's a good use of the funds because it would be largely a one-time only investment as we stand up the program and then look to try to make that model a self-sustaining model based on some of the examples that exist in other states, and is something that the council has discussed at length, wanted to support in the past, and just haven't had the resources to do that until today. So again, this is not a done deal. It will take passage of House Bill 2 and that funding appropriation existing in House Bill 2 before we have the funds to be able to continue with that effort. But at this point, we're feeling pretty optimistic about the opportunity to move forward.
Jenny, this is Mike Bosleman. I was just going to add a little bit because we're actively working at MDT to kind of do the handoff from Washington to Montana. Our pilot window's running out, so we're working hard to be sure we don't lose the service of the small RTN that we have in place now, and get the software and infrastructure in place. So we're looking forward to working with you.
Great. If you look at the, Genevieve, maybe just scroll up a page or two, you'll notice that we have been slower to spend the MLIA appropriation that we have this year, largely because of the pandemic and remote work slowing many of our efforts. The council meetings have all been remote, so we haven't spent any of our council dollars, for example. So we should have some year-end funds and have actually started the process of working on the job description and recruitment of a position to support the real-time network now. So we hope we can get that position filled sooner rather than later. Again, we can talk about the legislative priorities in just a little bit later in the agenda. Are there any other questions about the financial report?
Jenny, are there any projections or reasons to assume that if this the revenue does go down for the recordation fees, that's going to go back to its previous trend, or do you expect the drop to take it to a different level?
In talking to a few different people, we expect there to be a drop, but probably not a drop to the level it was at, and probably not lower than it was. And then we do have House Bill 49, which has passed the legislature and is heading to the governor's desk for signature. And if he signs it, that would mean a doubling of that recordation fee. So regardless, we would be then seeing an increased amount of collections.
And then Jenny, I can jump in. We had an economist join us and take a look at the information a few years back. Frank, I don't know if you were on the council yet, but I can point everyone to that information. And they didn't think it would drop as far as it has done in the past, and it would continue to grow, but at what rate and how quickly, we're unsure.
Thank you. And yeah, I'd forgotten about the increase in the recordation fee itself. So that's all good. So thank you.
Any other questions? All right, moving on to current business. Our next action item is approval of the FY22 grant program funding prioritization. I too want to echo Aaron's thanks for the work of the grant program subcommittee and doing your great due diligence, as well as the State Library staff and theme stewards for reviewing those applications as well. Aaron, do you want to give us an overview of the recommendations?
Aaron, this is Dan. I think you're muted.
Thanks, Dan. I was just asking Genevieve to pull up the document. Do you have that ready, or do you want me to do it?
Do it.
Thank you. And Dan was Jan was the chair of the subcommittee this year, so special thanks to Dan. Right there. There you go. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in the land information plan, we allocated or budgeted $250,000, and through this request, there's roughly $171,000 that has been asked through the grant program, and the prioritization outlines that. If you will scroll down to the next page. And that is tiny on my screen. Is there any way you could blow it up? Thank you. Yeah. Okay, cool. We did not see as many grant applications or a full request for the $250,000 this year as we have in years past. I feel that that's directly related to the pandemic and just the I guess the stress that's been put on local governments responding to this, local, tribal, and state. But I think that the prioritization that we have ranked here is we've got 8 really great projects that we're excited to work with, and we have this outlined here. So Missoula County, they are in their second year of a multi-phase project, and they were the prioritization is to fully fund them, and then also ask them to attend the MAGIP conference in Missoula 2022, and we've allotted some funds for them to attend that conference. Second is the Flathead County. This grant I'm pretty excited about because it was over a year in the making. We have partnered with the city of Whitefish and Flathead County, and I think it was at the Butte conference in 2019. First spoke with Matt Trevish of Whitefish on some cadastral related issues that he wanted to try to mitigate through the grant program. And with his hard work and the hard work of the Flathead County folks, they have submitted a grant. It's really great, a really great way to help improve the CAD MSDI, which is the digital representation of the PLSS. So that's going to be collecting control in the Whitefish area. And given that we did not have a full 250,000 ask, we wanted to reach out to Flathead County because digital the digital representation of the PLSS is such a high priority for us at the State Library, and also the amount of work that's entailed behind it. We'd prefer to have a speedier project rather than drag it out over multiple years. This will still be a multi-year project. It's been approved as a multi-year project, but we reached out to Flathead County, and I really I want to commend them on their quick response, because they were able to, well, let me take a step back. We reached out to them to ask them if they could also collect Columbia Falls, and they did agree to that. And so their initial request for funding was only $17,000, and then we said, hey, this was going to be like a 3 to 4 year phase project, and asked them to speed it up to collect another city. They agreed to it. They were even able to find additional funds through the city of Columbia Falls in like a day or two. And so that was pretty great. So we're going to fully fund their request, the original request, and then increase it by $25,500 to collect Columbia Falls. Next, we've got the city of Libby. Again, we have prioritized them to collect or to fully fund. And then one thing I've been seeing with local government is a request to get term licensing instead of perpetual, and it's something I've been working with local governments on. After a few years, you start to see a really high increase in licensing fees. And so we're recommending that they purchase a perpetual license instead of a term license, cheaper up front, but like I said, over the life of a GIS, much more expensive. And so we've added additional funding to cover that cost. And let's see, City of Thompson Falls, Pend Oreille County, Town of Sunburst, City of Thompson Falls, Town of Sunburst, and City of Libby, they're all and Phillips County, all brand new grant recipients. So it's nice to see new folks join us. Pend Oreille County, they're on their 4th year of the project. We have to update their proposal and their budget, but we've fully funded this grant. And then the Town of Sunburst, I'm going to be working with. In the final column, you can see the MLI funds approved not to exceed, and so their full request was for $27,600, and we're going to partially fund them, but we've been working on on developing the statement of work, and we have to exclude some things at this point. We don't have that full amount quite yet of what we will exclude, so we want to fund them to not to exceed $27,600, but likely it's going to come in less than that. And then Anaconda Deer Lodge, fully fund. Phillips County, fully fund, and we're going to ask them to attend the MAGIP 2022 conference. And then the last grant was not ranked. It was from the Montana Department of Commerce, and basically was not recommended for funding, not ranked because it didn't meet the relevance and purpose of the MLIA. And so if you scroll down just a little more, and then there you go. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Any questions? And Dan, did I miss anything? Do you want to add anything? Or any other subcommittee members?
Thanks, Aaron. I'm just looking at my notes here, and I did want to just make a huge shout out to Aaron and the staff there for their patience in teaching the subcommittee how to use Amplifund software this year. That's where the bulk of our time this year was simply learning how to use the Amplifund software in the grant ranking process. And once we all learned how to use it, I think it went great. And so big shout out to Aaron and staff over at the library, especially for their patience with herding cats and getting us all together in learning this new software. And then a little bit about the process. I wanted to touch base with how the grant subcommittee worked to rank the grant and that you see in front of you. And the way that we did that is we went through using Amplifund software and individually ranked all the grants. And then we came back as a subcommittee and went through in detail all of our rankings and then came up with a consensus. And as you can see, the consensus was the ranks 1 through 8. That was a full consensus from the subcommittee. And then the one that we did not rank because it was determined it didn't qualify for the grant program was the one you see at the bottom of the screen there, the Department of Commerce grant that was applied for. And those were all my notes. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Any questions for Aaron or Dan or the subcommittee? Is there a motion to recommend the grant funding as proposed? And just a reminder to the council, your recommendation then goes to the State Library Commission for their acceptance of your recommendation. And again, that commission meeting is next Wednesday, April 14th. Is there a motion to recommend the grant proposal?
We recommend this proposal and send it on to the Library Commission.
Selena, is there a second?
Eric, second.
Thanks, Eric. Is there any further discussion? I want to ask if there's any public comments. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. Thank you. Aaron, I'll let you describe the next proposal.
Genevieve, could you pull that document up, please? It's linked through the agenda too, just so you know. Thank you.
Is this the right one?
No, off-cycle MLIAC grant
Okay.
for. There we. Yeah, I've scrolled down. Here you go. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So with the remaining, as a reminder, the $250,000 was budgeted as part of the Montana Land Information Plan for fiscal year 2022, and we've basically come up with a recommendation for the remaining funds for this year. And we've laid it out here in this this memo. So we wanted to make this proposal to the council. Basically, we have roughly $78,000 remaining as a part of this allocated funds for the grant program. Under our administrative rule, we have the ability to create an off-cycle grant. And so the idea is to create an off-cycle grant for the sole purposes of collecting new survey control to improve the digital representation of the PLSS. This aligns with the land information plan priorities, and this is a rough process of how we would create that program. So basically, we would use Amplifund and open an off-cycle grant application to be reviewed by the grant review subcommittee, and then of course finally approved by the council. We would hope to open that program up and the grant application up and have the council prioritize the funding at the June meeting. And then, you know, the reality of the matter is we're not quite sure we would get a full request for $78,000. So we wanted to create a plan or a proposal for the remaining funds. And part two would be the remaining funds that are not allocated to a PLSS grant through that off-cycle grant program would be used to develop a training program for the purposes of educating our data providers and data partners. Again, as a part of the MLIAC grant process, only state, local, and tribal and university professionals are eligible for that process. So it'd be educating those data partners on MSDI data and best practices, MSDI data development, and then also with the possibility of grant writing and project management. Again, this aligns with the goals and priorities of our land information plan. So the proposed, could you scroll down just a little, please? The proposed process would be to partner with the MSDI theme leads, the council, MAGIP, and other stakeholders to basically conduct a training needs assessment for our MSDI data partners and future or existing grant applicants, and then develop some sort of training plan for training these two different groups, and then of course the implementation of that training plan. Depending upon the amount of funding left over and where we're at with COVID, we'd really have to try to weigh whether it'd be 100% virtual or if people are traveling and we can do something next year, it could be something where we could provide funds for travel to the state library to take some of this training. The good news is we can do training online. We know that's possible. And with some of our existing contracts in place, we feel like we could probably put together a pretty good system here. Any questions about those two pieces of the full proposal?
Yeah, Aaron, this is Elena. I think there's a mismatch in numbers. One of these, there's a typo somewhere in the let me see here. So in the previous document we were looking at that lists all of our grantees, the total amount recommended for funding is 170,141. And this document here shows 171,141.
Okay, let me just
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Elena. I saw that too.
Yeah.
All right, I've got my other. Okay, so we are off by 1,000.
Yeah, it's 1,000.
It should be 79,859. Thanks for pointing that out.
Okay.
So we will update that to say 79.
Any questions or discussion about either of these recommendations?
Aaron, do we have, I'm looking at the CAD and SDI site now, do we have a map of areas that are prioritized for, you know, a bigger need for adjustment control?
Yeah, so this is a pretty quick turnaround, and I'm not sure if there's something out there right now. I'd have to dig in myself, but I have notified staff to basically outline those priorities so that when we do develop the process, the priority areas will be publicly available. I already do have, there were some grant applications that were not submitted. Again, I think it's because of the stress on local governments, but I was hoping to possibly to work with them to help them to submit a PLSS grant through this special process, and then recently had some interaction with some local government in eastern Montana that have not submitted grants yet, and just due to the timing of it all and the loss of staff, they weren't able to. Actually, I don't think they were aware of the program. But now they are, and so I think that we possibly could get at least 1 or 2 additional grants to help improve the CAT NSDI. But like I said, we'll make sure that that priority area is available.
Any other questions? None. Is there a motion to accept this recommendation for the remaining unallocated grant funds?
This is Dan Staley, so moved.
And is there a second?
This is Jerry Gerbentz. I would second Dan's motion.
It's Jerry. Is there any further discussion? Is there any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor of the recommendation, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. The motion carries. Jessica.
We have a motion today to approve a land cover plan. We drafted this plan out of a priority that we identified in the land information plan, the Montana Land Information Plan, where we had wanted to develop a partnership-driven plan that's guiding our comprehensive revision, as well as a process for routine maintenance and updates. So this is through 2022. We presented some land cover updates to the committee 2 meetings ago, and then introduced this plan this past meeting. If you scroll down to page 1, the executive summary, you can see that we have 4 recommendations. These grew out of input from our land cover working group, which has met 3 times. And the 4th is actually addressing higher resolution single theme products, and that is really spun into a rangeland and invasive species subgroup. Some of the tools that have come out of moving toward a plan include a story map that we provided links to, and I'll drop that in here right now too, again, as well as 2 time series platforms that we've been working closely with the state library to develop. So we want to see the MSDI land cover framework moving towards something that is more dynamic, and we spell that out in the plan, as well as look toward some long-term goals. And we have an implementation timeline through 2022.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm really excited both for the work of the land cover work group and the presentation of this land cover plan, similar to what we've done in the past with the LIDAR plan, for example. I think this gives council members, especially those who aren't as intimately familiar with the needs, a better sense of what the needs of the theme are, as Jessica said, what the goals are for the near and upcoming future, in a way that allows us to better reflect those needs in the land plan. Having information in a more concrete way helps us think through what those priorities should look like in the larger land plan as we prioritize that kind of funding. So I really appreciate this process. I hope others do as well. And Jessica, thanks for sharing the plan with us. Are there questions or discussion with Jessica?
Jessica, this is Alan with the BLM. I love this work that's been done. I just am curious what it would take to get more people engaged in using this or reviewing it, analyzing it, you know, being a contributor to this in our agency. I'd love to have you or somebody from your group give a presentation at some point to us. And I'm just curious, what are some of the main customers that you deal with on a regular basis?
Our primary users that we have identified through this process have really been folks who are interacting with the map viewer on the Heritage Program website and printing out environmental summary reports. So people who are looking at the project level to get a feel for, in general, the biological communities that exist in an area and how we might, through a MIPA or NEPA process, minimize impacts to those resources that are potentially out there.
Yeah, Alan, this is Rob. I would echo a lot of what was just said. We found that people working on the NEPA component of a land management project, they like using the viewer and downloading a full package of environmental conditions. You know, the Forest Service, we have our own mapping system, vegetation mapping system, and a while ago, in 2015, we did some work for the Missoula field office, the BLM Missoula field office, and mapped some of the ground that was adjacent to the Lolo National Forest. They wanted that so that we could all speak the same language when talking about veg conditions. But they might be a good source for evaluation. They could compare this update to the mapping that we did for them and see if it meets their needs. So anyway, something to think about.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Good point. I may reach out a little bit more, you know, from a personal standpoint with BLM and see what we can do to join up on this a little bit more. Thanks for showing this.
Thank you, Alan. I'd like to follow up with you on that.
Yeah, Alan, and I would highly recommend joining you or one of your staff joining the working group as well to participate in what they've got going on a yearly basis and any updates to this plan.
And kind of a follow-up to Alan's question, do you know, is the Montana Association of Planners involved in the project at all?
No, excuse me, no, but getting that piece of information, I would definitely like to reach out to them. We are really looking to identify end users to join our group. Right now we have a lot on the side of map developers and GIS folks, but looking at ecologists and end users would be great. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's one thing that I get excited about, just is helping counties with their growth policies and land use plans, is having this sort of data in one place and kind of not scattered all over interagencies will help folks at the county level, at the local level, with efficient land use plans. So this is great. Thank you.
Yeah, that is great to hear. We, in the long term, in terms of a framework, would like to see kind of a place where we can compile land cover data sets that are not just at this coarse scale, but also any sorts of products that are being developed that really represent the best available information that's out there.
Other questions or discussion? This is an action item to accept the MSDI land cover plan. Is there a motion to accept the plan?
This is Alex. I'll so move.
Thanks, Alex. Is there a second?
Alan, second. Beat you, Eric.
Is there any further discussion? Is there any public comment on the land cover plan? Mr. Hammer.
I just, a lot of this is just reiterating what Jenny said, but I'm really excited to see this. I think it's probably, I was going to say 3 to 4 years ago since I first heard discussions about kind of modernizing, revamping land cover. I think it's probably more like 5 or 6 years ago. And so just to see this compiled in the plan, I'm excited about what I'm seeing as the future of land cover. And then again, like Jenny said, just to see this pattern in multiple themes now where we're getting these plans down on paper, and to hear some of the discussion that's been here already. I think we're all interested in seeing who else might be interested in being involved and what other things can be done with this and how we can make it an even better framework layer. So thanks, Jessica, for taking the lead on this.
Thanks, Evan.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to accept the plan, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, and thanks again, Jessica.
Pleasure.
Jessica, let's work on a joint statement now that this has been approved, and we can send it off to folks like MAP and NSGIC at the national level and some other folks as well.
Okay, I'll follow up with you on that. Thanks, Erin.
Awesome, thank you.
Erin, let's talk about our strategic plan.
Okay. All right. I don't have any slides in place or ready to be shown yet, but the Montana State Library has awarded the contract for the strategic plan, and I want to thank the part of the folks who helped go through that process to select the contractor. And so AppGeo has been selected, and we're pretty confident in the process that they have presented to us. And basically, we're going to get things kicked off pretty quickly. In an ideal world, they would have been joining us in Missoula for the MAGIP conference. Unfortunately, it is what it is, and we missed the conference with their ability to join and kind of engage the community. But this is the official announcement. We're going to be drafting a letter and well, just a basic announcement to let people know that we'll be seeking their input on the strategic planning process for GIS coordination in the state of Montana. There'll be several opportunities for folks to contribute. There'll be some surveys sent out, and there'll also be workshops. So I encourage everyone who is not a part of the council to join us in that process. And also council members will be joining us in that process as well. Kind of take like a two-pronged approach with folks that are kind of like our GIS professionals and the highly technical folks, and then those who are more of our users of our products and services. And so we will be starting the we'll be meeting. I've reached out to a few of you to see if you could join us in our core team, basically trying to get representation from local. We have to keep the team small, but we wanted a local government rep and then a private or or federal or tribal rep. So thank you for those of you who have volunteered. We had a lot more volunteers than we have slots, and I think we'll do the old draw a name out of the hat and let you know next week when we start the meeting process. So we're very excited. Along with the strategic plan, there'll be a companion business plan coming out of it for one of the identified items to move forward on under the strategic planning process. So we're very excited. I think it's perfect timing considering some of the legislative efforts that have passed through the legislature. And so we look forward to working with AppGeo and creating the first plan in a very, very, very long time. I think the original is, I think it's going on 15 years old. The first geospatial strategic plan. So very excited. Any questions?
All right. Thanks, Erin.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to share with you a legislative update, some of which is contained in the weekly updates that I've been sharing with people. So not a lot of this will be new. In your agenda is a link to a landing page that we prepared for the legislature that has materials pertaining to the state library and the state library's budget requests, as well as other legislation. You'll see links there to our MLIA legislative report that we do every year, as well as information about collections, the grant program, and information in support of House Bills 49 and 50. So if you're interested in perusing some of that kind of information, it's available for you to review there. At this point, we're feeling like we've had a really successful session. We've got a ways to go, and with the addition of the federal ARPA funds, things are a little bit in flux right now. We're hearing lots of rumors about possible adjournment early with the legislature coming back later this summer when the federal government has more of their requirements and regulations in place around the ARPA funds so that the legislature can finalize its work. So lots of rumors at this point in time. Three key pieces of legislation that we continue to work on. First, House Bill 2, our budget bill. Everything that was proposed in the governor's budget is included in House Bill 2. That includes a small increase in an appropriation of funding that's a pass-through fixed cost mechanism paid for by state agencies to help support the cost of the Natural Resource Information System and our GIS program. Originally, 5 agencies split about $280,000 a year to help fund that work. That amount has been increased by about $117,000. And that cost now is shared by the 19 agencies that all make use of Esri software through the state of Montana Enterprise License Agreement. So it's a nice little bump in funding. It also creates a mechanism that we hope will help to sustain and increase that amount of funding over time. So we're grateful for both of those opportunities. And then the other key increase that was in addition to what is in Governor Gianforte's budget is the one-time only appropriation of MLIA dollars for the real-time network that I mentioned earlier. Again, those are existing dollars. They're not new monies. They're existing dollars that are in the land information account. The legislature is giving us appropriation to spend those dollars over the next biennium to help stand up a statewide real-time network. So we're really, really excited to have that kind of one-time only funding to be able to launch that effort in a more real way. So House Bill 2, our budget is looking pretty good right now. The bill was heard by Senate Finance and Claims last week. There's not yet a date for the floor debate there because the amendments in the Senate that bill will go back to the House and ultimately, typically to a free conference where the final details of the budget bill are worked out before they go to Governor Gianforte. And then the two other primary pieces of legislation that we visited about in previous meetings are House Bills 49 and 50. House Bill 49 was the bill that would increase the recordation fee from, it was $7 in total to $8. $1 right now goes to fund the Montana Land Information Act. And as you know, that's split 75-25 between the state and local governments. So House Bill 49 would add an additional $1 to the recordation fee for the purposes of the Land Information Act. And again, it maintains that proportional split between the state and local governments. So the state would receive $1.50 and local governments would receive 50 cents. There is some interesting information there linked from the State Library landing page about collections at the local level. Since the act was enacted, local governments have collected about $1.3 million through that act. And so this has the potential to double that funding or a little bit more over the course of the next decade or so. That bill has successfully passed the legislature at this point and is working its way to the governor's office for signature. And then what I should say about that first bill, House Bill 49, this funding really just allows us to sustain and maintain the work that we already do. Many of you know that we sustained pretty significant budget cuts in 2017. And so the legislature was looking for ways to help fund the state library that didn't rely on state general fund, and felt that it was time to increase funding associated with the act, tied to recordation fees, a mechanism that really closely aligns with the work and the business drivers that the recordation fee goes to fund. So that funding will largely allow us to maintain our existing work, including catching up on some of the themes that have lagged behind because of the budget cuts, like addressing and transportation and geographic names that allow us to invest more in some of our online applications that are currently fairly stagnant. So we're really optimistic that the governor will sign that bill and we'll be able to address those kinds of needs. The second bill, House Bill 50, is funding that would allow us to support ongoing GIS data assessments to support Next Generation 911. So this would be essentially a new program for the state library. You may be familiar with the one-time only assessment that we did a couple of years ago with funding that was appropriated to the state library in 2017. But as we know, in order to maintain the data to support Next Generation 911, that data has to be constantly maintained and constantly assessed to ensure that the data itself is accurate and meets the standards to support Next Generation 911. So we would use this funding to enter into a contract with a private vendor for a cloud-based software as a solution to support local governments so that they have the ability to maintain and conduct those assessments on a regular basis. And then with staff of the state library, we would be able to support their training and data development needs to support Next Generation 911. Similarly, that bill has now passed the legislature and is also making its way to the governor's office for signature. And all indications are that he intends to sign both of those pieces of legislation. I'll stop and ask if there's any questions about those two bills. Then also shared in your meeting materials are a number of other requests that the State Library is making, specifically related to the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA funds. As I previously mentioned, one of our top priorities would be completing the acquisition of statewide LiDAR data, leveraging the 3DEP program to provide additional funds to complete that acquisition. We've asked for about $8 million to support that effort. We've asked for funding to support completing the wetland mapping for the state of Montana. There's a little over 400 quads that have not yet been mapped. So we've asked for 1.5 million to complete that work. It's important to note that the elevation theme and the wetlands theme are the two themes for which we don't have current statewide mapping that meets current standards. And so were we successful in getting this funding, this would give us the opportunity to complete that statewide mapping for those two themes, something that we're really excited about. And then the third request would help to support the real-time network as it grows. In addition to the one-time only money that's in House Bill 2, that funding would give us the ability to hire a program coordinator and begin the work to develop and grow the network and to grow the work that's already been done around Montana. But it's not enough to stand up enough of the stations to reach sort of a statewide coverage. And so we've asked for some ARPA funding to help procure more of those stations statewide in order to really launch the effort in a very concerted effort in the next biennium. We had great hearings discussing all of those different kinds of proposals in the last several weeks. We've seen lots of great support from legislature as well as stakeholders from a variety of industries. What we're hearing right now is that instead of supporting individual projects within legislation, there will be an application process for different pots of funding available through ARPA that local governments and agencies will be able to apply for these kinds of purposes. And so again, we need to see how the bill ends up, what's ultimately passed by the legislature. They are waiting to get more federal guidance about intent and exact uses of the funds before making some of those kinds of final decisions. So a lot at play there, but I think there's some real opportunity for us to see some investment in these kinds of needs we have going forward. Any questions or comments or discussion? Anything else from the legislature anybody wants to bring up?
Hi, Jenny. This is Rob All speaking.
Hi, Rob.
Hi. I just wanted to say that I've been a member of both the land cover and the elevation working groups, and they've been really great mechanisms for us to collaborate. I'd like to maybe suggest expanding something like that to the issue of control. I know that in the Forest Service and the BLM, there is an interest in merging their control networks. And that would benefit the state as well. So what I'm thinking of is maybe as we go forward, finding a mechanism for us to collaborate like we do in the elevation working group when it comes to issues of control, and bringing funding from, let's say, Forest Service, BLM, and the state together to help enhance that network, and the tribes as well. So overall, I think things are working very well. This is another additional channel for us to communicate. And when Alan was talking, it really made me think that we can use this forum as well. But I think that's
thanks for that. Yeah, thanks for that suggestion. I'm wondering how that relates to our the previous proposal for some of the remaining grant funds and some.
Yeah, that's what got me thinking. Yeah. So maybe we wait to see how this legislation comes out and see if that can be leveraged in a broader way.
And I can chime in a little here. So the way the structure is basically set for the Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure and Control, geodetic control, now known as mapping control, being one of those layers, is that we don't want this to be done in a vacuum. We want information from our data providers and our data users, and feedback in developing these types of plans. Obviously, mapping control is so important to. It's the foundation of so many other layers. And so we have the ability to spin up working groups when needed. We've had imagery working groups in the past when especially around an example, when the NAEP, exactly. When the NAEP was talked about going to a service-based model, we got the group together to discuss some of the issues there, and there's other issues that we've been trying to get the imagery working group back together to discuss archival and historic imagery data sets that are available. So I think this is you can bring up a great point, and I'll work with Bob Holliday, who's the mapping control lead, to call a working group meeting to discuss some of these items that you bring up, because that I would say because of RTN, I think that I've had we've had a great relationship with MDT, but because of RTN, I've really gotten to know some of their surveyors, and I've been able to work with them and and some other surveyors groups along with Marl's with the Forest Service to get some of these data sets that we rely heavily upon. So if there's, we're always taking control. If it's out there and available, we would love to have it. There's been so many proposals in the past through the council about trying to get any kind of state control that's collected should always come through the state library. And so in some instances it's been volunteer based or grant based, but we would love to work further to improve the that specific theme along with all the others that are tied to it.
Great. And I think what I heard from you, Aaron, is that over time different topics become rise to the surface, and as that becomes the case, we'll create a working group for it.
Absolutely.
So
yep.
As control becomes something that we are more interested in, we'll form a group there. So
yeah, yeah, it's kind of like, I wouldn't say special interests, because if there's a need that these working groups can meet as often as needed. But yes, absolutely, and clearly there's a need now for the mapping control group to meet and just get the information out there on data collection and what we're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. So count on our participation when that becomes more viable.
Thanks for the suggestion, Rob. Evan, have your hand raised.
Yeah, just on legislation more generally, had a couple of other bills that may be of interest to some of the folks here and have some kind of linkage to MLIAC work. One is HJ10. It's an interim study on autonomous vehicle use. We think there's likely tie-in, certainly with RTN, but there may be other areas where that impacts statewide data, GIS data collection. So one to be on your radar. That is through. It passed. I don't think studies have to be signed by the governor, but it's been signed by the speaker and the president. So that one's done. There were a couple others. One just in the last week we were tracking was intended for cell phone location privacy, Senate Bill 242, which is interesting. On the one side, at the library, we're very interested in privacy and in protecting people's privacy. On the other hand, this was such a general bill. It just kind of talked about gathering locations from cell phones. It wasn't even specific to using the GPS on the phone. And so there were a lot of concerns about how that might impact data collection processes that it wasn't intended to impact. And that was ultimately tabled last week. And then another one, I don't know if this was talked about in MLIAC over the last couple of years. near the end of last session, there was a bill restricting access to Fish, Wildlife, and Parks detailed location data. They're basically like telemetry data for tracking animals. And that did not pass that session. There was some discussion of it in the interim, and there was another bill that came this session, but that also failed. That was Senate Bill 2. But again, just because they may be of interest to folks here and somewhat relating to MLIAC topics, I just thought I'd mention those.
Thanks, Evan. Let's see, Michael.
Hi, Michael Fashway. I just wanted to make a comment regarding Rob's discussion about mapping control in the working group. We have been having regular meetings with the BLM regarding cat NSDI, and as part of those, the Forest Service has started to join us, largely to kind of keep us aware of some areas where they're collecting control that could be incorporated into cat NSDI. So it's not specific, you know, we had a map and control working group, but we have been in touch with the Forest Service a little bit, and they're keeping us, at least some folks are, apprised of what control they're collecting, you know, in terms of us incorporating it into cat NSDI adjustments. So, but we could certainly try to broaden that and make it into or spin up an actual focused group on mapping control. So just wanted to let everyone know.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Michael. That's good to know. And that's ultimately where I was hoping to go with it, you know, to make sure that resources that we have collected are available, you know, to enhance your work as well. So is that the regional surveyor that you've been working with? You know?
Well, typically it's Will.
Will Petty?
Petty, yeah. And then
Yep.
there's someone else who sometimes joins as well. His name is escaping me, but yeah.
There's been some revolving doors there, but yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Ken.
Jenny, I might have missed it, but I didn't hear anything, I think, about the broadband ARPA project.
Oh, thanks for reminding me. So we're waiting a little bit to see exactly how the state is going to address broadband holistically. And then the State Library has also put together a proposal for funding to help launch a broadband mapping effort to adequately map broadband resources in the state. And then ultimately, we think probably to tie that information to the structures data set, that those exact decisions would remain to be seen and workflows to be developed and that kind of thing. But we do have a proposal made to the governor's office. It looks like the State Department of Commerce is going to be taking the lead on broadband. I've heard other rumors, but that's what we're sort of hearing right now. And incorporated in their planning is the need for broadband mapping and work with the State Library on that effort. I think that might actually come through a different bill, though. It's sounding like that might come through Senate Bill 297.
Thank you.
Other questions related to the legislative session? Okay, let's move on to new business. There's a request to extend the FY20 grant applications. Sure.
Okay, so we typically only extend a grant project one additional year, And due to the extenuating circumstances of the global pandemic, we have considered extending the FY 2020 grants. This would be a one-time only special extension request for the fiscal year 2020 grants into a third year. After speaking about this with Jenny, she asked that I work with the subcommittee, the grant review subcommittee, to come up with a process, pretty much a high-level process for what that could look like. Typically, extensions are not brought to the council for review and approval, but given that this was an extenuating circumstances and there's a little bit of administrative burden on our side, we wanted to make the process more official through the council itself. So the overall process, the current grantees contracts end on May 15th of this calendar year, and we have heard of some issues with being able to fulfill the project due to travel, lack of being in the office, and of course their attention diverted to other activities in the state or in their environments. Excuse me. So basically, the overall process would be that the Montana State Library would announce to the eligible grantees and host a meeting to notify them of this process, and that we would be creating a one-time only extenuating circumstances third year extension. They would have to create and submit a special extension request and follow some of the items that we have outlined to the state library. We would submit that to the MLIAC grant subcommittee for their review, and then we would review all of the subcommittee would review those and then submit those to the council for the May 12th meeting for the council's final approval. And this process basically outlines who would be eligible, which grantee would be eligible, and what we would like to see in that document. And then if you would like to scroll down, there is a list of the current eligible grantees. So we've got 7, and what makes them eligible is, well, they have not expended all of their grant money, and they have at least $5,000 remaining in the grant themselves. So we would offer this to them so that they could complete the project and be successful. Are there any questions?
Questions for Aaron? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve this one-time only process for a third year grant extension?
I move.
Is there a second?
This is Dan Staley, second.
Any further discussion?
Just one minor detail. Can you scroll up, Aaron, just so I understand what this document is a little bit better? Okay, special extension. Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Any public comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Aaron.
All right, I am going to share my screen again. Okay. Let me pull up my documents here. So I had to dive a little deep into the archive to find an outdated best practice. And so basically, let me pull that up. Can you see the best practice, GIS best practices in Montana?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So in 2009, MAGIP worked with some folks from I do believe it would be the Montana State Library at the time, and the GIS, the Base Map Service Center. Change names, I don't know what it was at this point. Basically to come up, the technical committee of MAGIP to come up with some best practices that were approved by MAGIP and then submitted to the council for endorsement and approval. And it was approved at the, I do believe it was a winter meeting in 2009. If it's at this exact date, I don't have it in front of me. I apologize. I don't have the executive summary, but this was what was adopted by the council as a best practice for Montana. This is outdated. And the one I want to bring up particularly today would be the spatial reference system. And so I wanted to introduce the topic for several reasons. Number one, we'll kind of go through and see all the work into the archive and the decisions that the council has made over time to update any best practices or standards that had been adopted to make sure that they're in line with the most latest and greatest technical specifications that folks are using nowadays and therefore technically relevant. So the spatial reference system is no longer technically relevant. And so basically I want to introduce the topic today, recommend using the most up-to-date current spatial reference system for State Plane NAT 83 2011 for several reasons. It is the most current and up-to-date spatial reference system, so we'd like to recommend that. And then second, it will make using this will make it an easier transition when the next datum is updated. And I have 2024 as a question mark because it was supposed to be 2022, but it did get pushed back. So we're not quite sure exactly when that next datum will be updated. And basically number three is I wanted to work with a few council members to come up with a better process for approving best practices, what type of workflow that you would like seen come through, what kind of background approval process we would like to have. Basically, do we need the all of the MSDI theme leads endorsement, the MAGIP endorsement, what kind of process we would like to have in place for adopting these types of best practices. And I was just looking for maybe one or two council members to help me work on that, and probably partner with folks from the MAGIP board as well. So basically just wanted to introduce the topic. We won't have to take action on this today. But probably, I don't think there's a hurry on our end. People are already using this the spatial reference right now because it is the latest and greatest and the most up to date that we have available to us. But we want to make it official in our policy. and update this very old best practice.
So Aaron, this is Dan Staley. I don't know if you want a discussion now, but just a quick update on the legislative effort.
Oh,
this.
yeah.
NGS has asked Marls to carry that legislation, and we have delayed that because of the anticipated release date of 2024. That's the official release date from the powers that be there. And so we've decided that it's just not worth the legislative effort at this time to update anything legislatively, but we will be involved when that happens. And the other thing is there's been talk about a state, kind of a semi-state coverage of low distortion projections. The ones that get approved by NGS will be on the most recent spatial coordinate system. So there will be an easy conversion at that time for those of us that are collecting data using the low distortion projection system. So that's the update I have for you.
Thank you. That's great. And I know that the NGS is providing draft legislation. Is that something that Marls is talking about utilizing?
Yes, they worked back and forth with us to they drafted sort of nationwide legislation and then asked the states to tweak it accordingly. And we did that. We have a working committee. We did that, and that was accepted by the stakeholders. And now it's just on hold.
And does it reference will it reference 2024, or will it reference the most current version that NGS has approved? I can't remember how the language goes. Rather than committing to a certain date, committing to the best available data.
Yeah, the most recently, the most recent NGS approved is the way that the current draft is drafted. That way we don't have to amend the legislation every time a new coordinate system is released.
That's great, Dan. Thanks for keeping us in the loop on that.
Any other questions for Aaron?
Hi, Aaron. I do. This is Michael from MEGAP. I do want to state that we would love to help out with this. If and when it does move forward. MEGAP. I know we've been pretty conference heavy last few years, so we'd love to help out with this as well, as you had mentioned earlier. So whatever you need, let me know.
Absolutely, and I will, give MEGAP credit because they were the ones that had initially brought this forward for the council's adoption and approval. So we wouldn't want to do this process without your involvement again. So we can work on that. I know it just seemed to have the reference to this document just seemed to have disappeared rather than have been updated off of websites, and so I wanted to instead of it disappearing, for us to update update these best practices.
Yeah, it sounds great. Thank you for bringing this up.
Yep, thanks.
Ken?
Aaron, one other thing you might want to put on the radar on this, since it looks like it's been more than a decade since we last kind of revisited this. The requirements for next gen 911, I don't think this needs to happen right now, but it certainly will need to happen before the next decade. I don't know how far out we are from, establishing actually next gen, because it requires a lot of additional work and funding and other things we don't have at this time. But the dynamics there is that the boundary data for that, the administrative boundaries for next gen, have to be in WGS 84 in latitude, in a geodetic coordinate system rather than state plane or a Cartesian. So it's basically what it means is that there's going to be, as every county pulls things together, or as a core service provider, however that happens, brings the data together statewide, there can be scope creep as you do multiple transformations. So we probably want to be somewhat careful, since we'll be kind of interacting with some future designated contractor likely, as well as all the local governments, to kind of recognize that, and because they'll be required to maintain it, and they probably won't want to change it very often or do transformations very often, or else you'll end up with gaps between counties. So it's just something to put on the radar for the future. And maybe as you're discussing this, talk about it now so that it's in place when NextGen does eventually become active.
Yeah, and I think Frank had placed that in the chat as well. I think the another point to make is on the technical side of things, some of our staff have identified some best practice or suggested workflows on completing these transformations, and we're working on finalizing those documents, and we would be publishing those out to and possibly doing maybe a workshop or a training on some of the high level concepts and the workflow themselves. But we've discovered some things that we're not ready to share quite yet, but I think everyone would be interested in learning more about when downloading the files to do these types of spatial transformations in Esri software. So Bob Holliday has worked to implement some workflows, again, high level on these transformations. He's been working with Brian Shaw, who is our contact. He's our rep for NGS, and so they've been working on some workflows together, scripting those, and then other types of suggested workflows that will work well and across should work across some of the platforms that are currently out there when it comes to the desktop software. Hopefully at the next May meeting, I'll be able to have a presentation ready to discuss those some of the technical stuff we've discovered.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I have just one more thing, and maybe Dan might even set me straight as to whether this even makes sense, but in light of going with a statewide LiDAR data set as well, does it make sense to be recommending a standard vertical datum for the state data as well, or over this wide of the data set, does that even make sense?
Basically, with both horizontal and vertical, what the goal is to for the local users, if they're going to write best standard of practices, or let's say design standards or data collection standards, that they simply leave it at the most a standard published system, and so we kind of leave that at the local level with both horizontal and vertical. Published meaning that your software will handle it. And so Aaron kind of alluded to this with Esri, but that would include all sorts of technical design software that if you plug in some coordinates that are on a different geoid or a different vertical datum, or and coordinate system, as long as your software knows what it is and can do the conversion correctly, then generally we're recommending that you leave specific datums and coordinate systems out of your standards and just simply use the word published and adopted coordinate systems. So that way you can handle the data.
Thanks, Dan.
Briefly, I want to note some changes to some upcoming council meetings. The May 12th meeting should be on your calendar. We're going to make that a focused work meeting, particularly because of the likely passage of House Bill 49 and what that means for the amount of MLIA funds that we'll be collecting, essentially doubling the amount of funds that we have budgeted in the current FY22 land plan. The work of the council for that meeting will be to develop a plan or an enhancement to the current approved FY22 land plan to spend that increase in funding, assuming that Governor Gianforte signs House Bill 49. So plan on that meeting being a working meeting. And then we'd like to reschedule the June 2nd, or sorry, the June 24th meeting to June 2nd, so that the council could have your meeting and take action on a revised land plan ahead of the June 9th State Library Commission meeting, so that the council, after working on a plan in May, could recommend a final revised version of the FY22 land plan to the commission for the commission to take action on their June 9th meeting. And then very likely, given that we'll have just revised this plan, we would like to let that plan stand in for the FY23 land plan, if at all possible. So using this opportunity to have a little bit longer view into the FY23 land plan as well. Any questions about the process of revising the current approved land plan that will go into effect July 1 of next year? So look for updated calendar appointments for that June meeting. That concludes the agenda. Is there any business or announcements? Is there any additional public comment? Evan.
Yeah, I just quickly regret not saying something earlier while Elena was still on, but mentioning the retirements, these are a couple of folks in Elena and Janet. Janet, when I was on the council back in 2008, I had the role that it sounds like Eric has now of being the liaison with MAGIP, and at that time, Janet was, I don't remember exactly what the formal word for it, but staffing or her company was assisting MAGIP and had done that for many years. And then of course she's been on the council the last several years. So just enormous amount of work for the GIS community. So thanks to her for that. And then Elena, she has been on the grant subcommittee as long as I can remember. So not a knock on anyone else, but just she's always been willing to do that hard work. And you always knew coming to those meetings for discussion that she had read the grants and prepared and ready to talk about them and very serious about making sure they were successful. So just can't say enough to thank Elena for her involvement with MLIAC over the years.
Thanks, Evan. I wanted to share one more comment about a discussion that we had a little bit earlier in the session with Representative Windy Boy, who's the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer up in North Central Montana. He shared some discussion with us in our budget hearing about a couple of hopes that he have. I thought about bringing this up under the land plan discussion or the land cover plan discussion, but it's not quite right there yet, but maybe in the future it might be. He would very much like to see more of a coordinated effort between the state and the tribal historic preservation offices to identify cultural heritage sites in particular. And we have some just sort of very loosely formed ideas about what that might look like. Certainly there's overlap with needs around LiDAR data. I think there's probably a tie-in to the land cover plan and the information that we available through, if not that particular theme itself, the mechanisms by which we're sharing that kind of land cover information publicly. So, I think this is something that we're interested in putting our heads together around in the coming months to think about who the stakeholders are how we can intersect our current data collection processes and workflows and data needs to address this particular kind of need. I think there's some very similar opportunities for us in terms of how we manage culturally sensitive information and sensitive species information, for example. So that's a topic that I'm interested in digging into a little bit more coming out of this legislative session and going forward. Any other business for the good of the order?
Ginny, one quick comment on what you were just talking about. I just looked quickly. It looks like we do have a tribal representative, Carl John Healy Sr., but his term expires in June. I'm not pushing one way or the other as far as his involvement, but if that seat opens up, perhaps something the council that we might think about is pursuing a tribal historic preservation officer to fill the seat on the council. Someone in that actual role.
Thanks for that suggestion. Seeing no further business, we can adjourn and we'll see you again on May 12th. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good conference, everyone.
Bye.
All right, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.